Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is July 16th, 2024, and you are watching and listening to the Daily AI Show live. And today we are going to have an awesome conversation about Max Tegmark's vision of API, AGI, AI, 7 years after he wrote a book, Life 3.0. And luckily today we have an expert in the room that knows all about it, but including with that expert, who is Andy, by the way, we have Junmi and Beth, and I'm Brian. And we all know a little bit about it, but this was Andy. This was your idea to talk about this book. I will be the first to say I did not know this name when you first said, "Hey, let's do a show about this." I was like, "Who and what?" And please, ChatGPT and Perplexity, please help me. But I will tell you, I've learned a lot. I'm actually really excited to have this conversation. So I'm really excited for you to kind of bring this in case lots of people from our audience are not familiar with this book from 7 years ago and what it really means for our current world of AI and what's going on. So with that, I will happily turn it over to you, Andy, to impart all the knowledge and wisdom.
Well, I won't be the one imparting, but I'll try to collect it. I think one of the virtues of the Daily AI Show is that we introduce topics that, at the outset, we don't really know much about even ourselves. We're learning alongside each other and along with the audience in many respects. And I had the opportunity last year to read this book, Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark, and it really was foundational to my understanding of AI. And I was surprised later to find out that it was written in 2017. But let me tell you just what it is. It's a thought-provoking exploration of the future of AI. It's about the benefits and the risks, the ethical considerations, and the technical challenges of controlling a superintelligent AI. So who's Max Tegmark and why is he in a position to comment on this even? So he's from Sweden, and he showed an early aptitude for technology. He sold a word processor and a 3D Tetris-like game while still in high school. So one of those guys, like Mr. Reindeer. He pursued education in Sweden. He got a master's in engineering physics from the Royal Institute of Technology, and this is important, a BA in economics from the Stockholm School of Economics. So he's very broad in his academic pursuits, and his study of economics, I think, is relevant to his posture as someone who can comment on the future of not only the development of AI, but the future of life and how things work in our economies. He got a PhD in physics in 1994 from UC Berkeley, and then he joined MIT as a professor in the Department of Physics. He's been elected a fellow of the American Physical Society, awarded the Royal Swedish Academy of Engineering's gold medal in 2019. And in 2023, he was included among 100 most influential people in Time magazine, and specifically with respect to AI. Okay, his research at MIT is focused on cosmology, which I think the nature of reality and the universe, on physics and artificial intelligence. So I wanted to paint the picture of a kind of a Buckaroo Banzai superhero guy, who's really studied a wide range of subjects and is a major commenter and influencer in the world of artificial general intelligence now. And his approach to that is part of a larger philosophical discussion about the nature of intelligence and life. And recently, OpenAI kind of laid out a framework for our approach to artificial general intelligence. And what their framework, as they've described, is oriented really towards the practical perspective on the evolution of the development side and practical benchmarking of how we make those stages of progression towards that. Whereas Max Tegmark thinks about it in this broader philosophical and futuristic perspective on the overall evolution of intelligence. So he classifies life and intelligent life, particularly, in 3 different phases. And that's where Life 3.0 comes from. So Life 1.0 is biological life. Think worms and cells and so on, that evolved its hardware. It has no control over its hardware. and its software also was evolved through natural selection. And software would be sort of the nervous system and how it thinks and so on, ultimately. Not the worms. They're not thinking, but they have a nervous system. And then Life 2.0 is where we're living right now. And that's a cultural influence on life that allows, through education and through the fact that humans are the only ones that have advanced their intelligence in life to this stage where humans actually pursue pedagogy. We teach our offspring, and we learn ourselves, and we change our software through that learning process. And so, in effect, what he's saying is that we can't change our hardware yet, but which is our body, right? We can't change our hardware. We can add technology on the outside, but we can redesign our software. We can change our minds. So that's Life 2.0. Then Life 3.0 is a technological kind of life that can design both its hardware and its software. And that's what advanced AI is going to allow us to do. So this concept of 3.0 is relevant to artificial general intelligence. And in this book, and it has 8 chapters, I think, and we could recite those. But in this book, he lays out in chapter 5 the story of the Omega team, which describes artificial general intelligence being released into artificial superintelligence. The distinction between those two, I think, is generally understood. Artificial general intelligence is, a technological intelligence that can perform at about the level of a human. So it has reasoning capabilities, it's self-directed, it can do things. And a superintelligence, ASI, is one that can recursively redesign itself, both its hardware and its software, so that it advances in this iterative fashion at the speed of technology that is far faster than the speed of evolution. All right, so big ideas. And I shared this on an earlier show, this story of the Omega team, and I'll just give you an idea of this progression, this rapid progression once artificial superintelligence is achieved. So the story that he puts in this chapter 5 is about the Omega team. And it illustrates the idea of an intelligence explosion once an AI system reaches the capability to design and improve itself. So this AI that the Omega team develops is called Prometheus, and it advances from subhuman capability to superhuman capability within the first day of its release by recursively optimizing its own architecture in multiple generations. So here's the story quickly. On the first day, at 9 a.m., Prometheus version 1.0 is launched. It was slightly worse than the human programmers at AI development, and it was being asked to focus on its own development at this point. So within the first hour, Prometheus delivered version 2.0 of itself, which was slightly better than version 1.0, but still subhuman. But just 4 hours later at 2 p.m., version 5.0 was released, and it had blown past the team's performance benchmarks. It could no longer even be evaluated by the human team that was overseeing it, and it was accelerating. And by nightfall, Prometheus version 10.0 was deploying, and the recursive process was continuing, and they were ready to deploy Prometheus in the pursuit of certain objectives that they had, including making money to support the overall objectives of the Omega team. Now, I want to jump ahead to say that control of such an explosion was very important in this story. And the story progresses, and I encourage you to read it, but the story progresses. It's not a dystopian story. It shows how AI, with the correct controls, was able to create a very beneficial environment in this context of Life 3.0 for the humans who are, on the planet at the same time as this super intelligence. So let me just wrap up by saying one of the ways that they controlled that is they really kind of put an airlock around Prometheus, and it could only reach out into the real world with supervision from humans. So they didn't give it unfettered access to the world, and that prevented the dystopian scenario from emerging. And I want to just share with you a little bit about Max Tegmark's approach to the questions about the dangers of the release of superintelligence. And in 2014, he founded an organization called the Future of Life Institute. And you can find that at futureoflife.org. And I want to just read to you about the principles behind their approach to, this is now the, Max Tegmark founded Future of Life Institute, their approach to concerns about and regulation of artificial intelligence. They also look at nuclear weapons and, bioweapons and so on. But here, I'll just read quickly and then I'll leave it to our discussion. But our AI is racing forward. Companies are increasingly creating general purpose AI systems that perform many tasks. LLMs compose poetry, create dinner recipes, and write computer code. Some of these models already pose major risks, such as erosion of democratic processes, rampant bias and misinformation, and an arms race in autonomous weapons. But there is potentially worse to come. AI systems will only get more capable. Corporations are actively pursuing artificial general intelligence, which can perform as well or better than humans at a wide range of tasks. This will bring unprecedented benefits, but on the flip side, more than half of AI experts believe there is a chance that this technology could cause our extinction. This belief has nothing to do with evil robots or sentient machines. It is that AI can enable those seeking to do harm by easily executing complex processing tasks without conscience. And so militaries could lose control of high-performing systems designed to do harm with devastating impact. An advanced AI system tasked with maximizing company profits could employ drastic, unpredictable methods. Even an AI program to do something altruistic could pursue a destructive method to achieve that goal. We currently have no good way of knowing how AI systems will act when released because no one, not even their creators, understand how they work. Boom.
Mic drop. That was awesome, Andy, as I fully expected it to be. One of the things you brought up, and I just wanted to bring up, you didn't mention this part of the book, at least from what I read. And again, this is my ChatGPT and Perplexity summary of the book, so perhaps it's wrong. But my understanding is in the book, this Omega team, when they deploy the superintelligence, they do it to actually gain immense wealth so that they can then take that wealth and apply it to whether it be sciences, human needs, whatever that might be. But I think it brings up the larger question. It sounds like Max is also talking about that in the Future of Life, which is who is in control, and right. Is that necessarily a great thing? Whether that's a corporation, whether that's a country, is it in the best interest if, let's say, the government, the United States government, ends up they're the Omega team in so many words, right? And they have a airlock around a Prometheus, like in the next several years, let's say. Is that good for all that, the United States might stand for and say for democracy and helping? Is it detrimental? Who gets to this? I guess what I'm getting is who gets to decide who's on the team? Because I guess in the book they bring about the brightest, and they have a small team, and they do the right things, I guess, in the book. Like you said, it's not a dystopian story, but in real life, it seems to me that it's a race towards getting that airlock around a Prometheus, and it's not going to lead to more people wanting to share openly. It's going to lead to what I think we're seeing a little bit, even with OpenAI and others, which is more of a closed off walled garden where they're saying, well, we no longer want to share what we're finding because it's at such a level that it could be dangerous in our view if somebody else was to get it. And now there's no sharing across across the water or whatever the case is. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on that or anybody else did, but that was something I brought up I saw in the notes that I thought was interesting in the book, that's how they chose to solve problems, was basically gain wealth, use wealth to then go fix bigger problems.
Yeah, so I'll just make a quick comment about that. That's just one chapter in the book, is the story of the Omega team, which is a large part of it that is really profoundly interesting is his deep dive into the logic of how autonomous weapon systems evolve in practice in the hands of bad actors against good actors, if you can characterize it that way, and that how inherently difficult to impossible it is to control that, and what the downstream effects of that are. So it's not only about one central AGI, it's about many super AGIs out there, many of them in the hands of people who have nefarious objectives.
Right. Right. And one of the things that like jumped out at me as I was prepping for the show is a phrase that we see a lot, that we want to make sure that AI, AGI, ASI is in alignment with human values. But we're not in alignment with human values, right? That's not an agreed upon thing across humanity, which just calls into question for me, like, yay, let's do that. But are we going to have a conversation about what we think human values are? And depending on how it's phrased, right, it starts to say, oh, well, that's not the way I phrase the human value. That must be biased. So now it is a can of worms. And at the same time, yes, we want it in alignment with human values, as opposed to not being alignment with human values, right? I mean, if it's door 1 or 2, we definitely want door 1, but I think there's not agreement about what's behind door 1.
Yeah, for the good of everyone is a relative term. Who's getting to decide for the good of everyone, and we see that in micro environments. Obviously, all we have to do is look back through history and all the atrocities and things where it's the Spanish Inquisition and what the Catholic Church was involved in through the years and stuff like that, just to see what for the good of humanity looks like misguided, but at the time perhaps looks like this is the best for everybody. That's in history. Now what happens when you put a Prometheus in their hands? And what does that mean for the 7 billion humans who are currently living on the US and continuing to grow in population? So it's interesting. I mean, it's a really, really, like you said, Andy, I think you kind of said it. It's a thought-provoking story. And I guess that's the point, right? It was to generate conversations like this, and hopefully thousands or millions of these micro conversations of people talking about this openly and saying, hey, this is a complex problem. This cannot be solved easily. But the best thing we can do is talk about it. The worst thing we can do is go silent. Because that won't get us anywhere. That won't get any hands reaching across any aisles, political or otherwise. Just using that as an analogy.
And Andy made this point when he was giving the intro, but again, this was written in 2017. So he wasn't, it was published in 2017. So it was written whenever it was written, slightly before 2017. But also, he's clearly in many rooms of watching when it's happening, but the conversations were not happening then. Hey, it's probably 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 at the outside, and we're at this threshold. That was not a predicted, as much of an agreed upon prediction as it seems to be now. And I wonder how this phrasing or the way that the book is laid out, I wonder what would be changed if it were going to happen today, if it were going to be written today.
Yeah, with the knowledge of the world's reaction to like 3.5 and from November 2022 on, so to speak, would be interesting, because it's not as if GPT 3 or 2 or 1 never existed. Of course they did. They existed, people. It didn't just It
Right.
just didn't happen in November of 2022. These things have all been happening. Machine learning has been happening for decades, but it was just this tipping point at which it captured the world's attention, and they went from like 0 to whatever it was, Jimmy, like what, 1 million
5 days. 1
5
million
days.
users in 5 days.
1 million users. I was like, subscribers, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, 1 million users in 5 days. And if you look back at Facebook and other benchmarks earlier than that, it wiped the floor with them. Hey, before we get deeper into this conversation, I want to remind everybody that if you are enjoying this conversation and maybe it's your first time to the show, maybe you're a longtime listener, like a lot of our folks in the comments who we greatly appreciate. They show up daily and they add to the conversation. We really appreciate that. You can head over to thedailyashow.com. That's a good landing page, because what it'll do is, number one, it'll tell you how to see past shows. Obviously, you can find them on YouTube, you can find them on LinkedIn, you can find them on Spotify and other places. But the Daily AI Show is really sort of our one-stop shop. Also, what you can do there is, if you like these kind of conversations, if you like the types of things that we're talking about, and you're like, hey, I would actually take a little bit more of this, or maybe a different angle. That's why we started our newsletter, and so we put that out once a week on Sundays. We are about it would be edition number 7, I think, this week. So we're just getting into it. 7? Yeah. Beth says yes, 7. And so you can go sign up for that. It's obviously absolutely free. We're only sending out that newsletter. Nothing else is going out with it. And then also, if you are not in today's particular show, but if you are working with your company, or you own a company, you just work there, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate AI for your business, then I would encourage you to reach out to us. Go to that website, reach out to us. As you can see on our screen here from all our little subtitles, we all have different disciplines that we come from. I focus in sales. Obviously, everybody else has different disciplines in AI. And what we ultimately try to do is bring all of our collective experience from our team to help and work with other people's teams, whatever that might be. So go check that out. Want to make sure everybody knows about that. And please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this. We're here 5 days a week. And yeah, August 7th will be actually our 1-year anniversary of the show. So it's coming up soon. I want to make sure everybody knows that Carl is also here as well. He joined a little bit a while ago, but Andy was giving such an amazing intro there that we didn't want to break that. But welcome, Carl. And I'll just ask you, did you happen to read this book? Did you know about it? I was saying I didn't know about this before Andy brought it up or anything like that. And what's been your perspective about it before kind of getting in today's show, leading up to the show?
I honestly, I haven't read it, or did I Perplexity summarize it? So I just pretty much just listening to Andy give his world famous descriptions of it. So I think the interesting point here is that if we go back to I was trying to find where I saw this number, but it only said that 7.7, there are only 7.7 million ChatGPT plus users around the world. And then it broke down other subscriptions just for OpenAI. So if you think about that, that's not very many people that actually, I would say people who pay for it probably use it regularly. You just can't use it on that basis with the limits. So I would say, though, to get the actual build up to what Max was talking about, we need more and more people to actually use the tool or use the tools. And if you go back to the routers study, which what was it, like 54% new ChatGPT, and then everybody else was like in the single digits or very low double digits, like 11-12%. So that number to me was big, because then it's like, okay, well, it's really, really, really early. And to get to that tipping point, you need way more users than that. Even enterprise users, I would say, kind of fall in that bucket, because the enterprises are trying to tell their people to use it. They're using it kind of in very siloed ways. And if you look at the enterprise revenue, it wasn't in the billions. It was like overall it's $3.4 billion, but enterprise revenue was still pretty small. So you've got to think there is big groups, swaths of people that still haven't used it on a regular, used an AI on a regular basis. So I think that's something important to keep in mind too, as we think about this and what Max was talking about.
I think it's important
as
too,
regards
because
I'm sorry, as regards what Max is talking about, the vast unwashed population who do not understand how AI works or what its capabilities are will only be confronted by AI's outputs in the context of the things that Max is afraid of, which is okay in the hands of people who are trying to influence the political environment. It's misinformation on a grand scale. And they don't know that that's actually happening. You know how there's bot farms in Russia that are pretending to be humans. Well, they don't need to have a big building filled with people sitting at terminals anymore if they have super AGI to do that on a massive scale globally in order to influence opinions and basically shift people's attitudes away from focus on the sort of the terroristic aspects of what Russia's doing to Ukraine, and instead blame it all on NATO for even pretending that it was okay to bring in Ukraine into a defensive alliance. All of that can shift global attitudes on a scale unprecedented.
Right. And it's one of the reasons that when you hear us talk about those things, we're more often talking about China rather than Russia, because China's game in this context is much more elevated than we understand Russia's to be, right? In terms of their ability to do something like this. They're really where I believe human people, like there's not human people, but let's just go with it. There were human people in bot farms in Russia.
Well, no, but you've seen. Okay, we've all seen the mobile farms, right? So it's not, the bot farms aren't going to be. It's going to be the exact same thing where you have like walls upon walls of mobile devices,
right?
And the whole job of that is to, whatever comments, clicks, whatever you need to get the engagement level, you have that. You can essentially buy that and rent that. So yeah, for it to have bot farms and so on, but it's hard though, because you have to. This is where the education component comes in, where when you talk about the unwashed masses, you can't literally, you cannot believe anything you see or hear on social. Like you can't. You have to like triple check that. You can't just run with it, right? Because like there's so many things that came out. Like a new story would come out, and then 5 different takes, 20 different takes would come out of it, and then the takes it isn't a take. Some people say it's true, but you just don't know, right? You like, when you have to double, triple, quadruple check that until it actually, it's like, oh, okay, that's actually legit. But by that time, a lot of people have already bought into it. So it's kind of the dangerous point. And with AI, you can do it so quickly too.
Right. Also, just want a quick pushback that the unwashed masses are likely clearer about manipulation than the washed masses. Sure. I can't even talk, but you can be part of what we're talking about as the unwashed mass, even if you wash several times a day, because it's not about washing.
I just had a recent, what was it, 2 days ago? Like I said, I'm overseas, and so at some point in the morning, on social media, I caught the story of the assassination attempt on former President Trump in the United States. And, Carl, to your point, I guess, like the first thing I did was go somewhere else to validate that what I saw was in fact true, because the first place I saw it was on social media. And in this charged climate, political climate that we have in the United States right now, it's reasonable to assume that something like that could be fake. There was nothing about the video that would make me think somebody couldn't, with the right tools and the right, the right desire, to fake something like that, which is, I don't know, both sad and whatever, but like, that's the world we live in. And, that the first thing I wanted to do was say, wait, hold on. Where is that? Well, let me see that. And so I'm constantly saying this to my daughter as well, which is like, she'll say, oh, it's she'll joke and say it's like a new trend on TikTok. And I'll be like, don't believe everything you see on TikTok. I want to make sure my daughter's growing up in a world where she has a whole different level of criteria that she has to live with in her life that I didn't have to live with at 13. There might have been a doctored photo or something like that, and whatever the case is, but nothing like what she is being shown daily. And it would be silly to think, oh, I'll put a bubble around her and I'll protect her. I can't protect her. All I can keep telling her is just remember what you see might be fake. It could be fake. As real as it looks, it might be fake. And she gives me a lot of the, yeah, Dad, I know. You think everything is fake. I said, no. These are the conversations that I think parents are having all over the world, is that you have to be really, really careful. And it does I think it, to circle back to the book, obviously, I think it does go in line with what Max seemed to be saying, was there's a lot to take in. Mm-hmm. And it seems like he does a really good job of talking about the whole and not just talking about a particular piece, which I think is really, really cool. And I think, Andy, you sort of laid that out for us. I think it really is indicative of his background and his economics background and his MIT background and, all the things that he was able to do or has been able to do in his life. Gives him this sort of worldview. We were sort of talking about that yesterday in the show with this idea of generalist versus specialist. And it seems to me that he has enough worldly knowledge to be a, welcomed voice when it comes to the future of AI, and we need more people like him, maybe not necessarily at his education level, but people who are the bricklayers, are the people who aren't necessarily being touched by AI today, to be part of this conversation. Because the last thing we want to do is exclude them by saying, well, it doesn't touch you today. Yes, it's like, you're a bricklayer. Don't worry. You've got probably a good 5, 10, 15 years before the robots can do your job better than you and can put up a building. And they go, I'm good. I don't really need to know about the AI stuff. It doesn't affect me at all in my life, really. Like, how do we get more of those people into the conversation and get them to care, which is tough because, we all individually kind of care about our own lives and how it affects us personally. So how do you get them to care about the larger thing? I think Andy in the book, doesn't he talk about the next 10,000 years, the next billion years, and how we need to have a long-term view that perhaps sometimes sacrifices a little bit of the short-term goal. We need to be thinking way, way down the road to figure out how something like a Prometheus is going to affect humanity, interworldly in humanity for eons,
Yeah. And, humans are, notoriously bad at long-term thinking.
Right.
So, so it's easy to say that. It's really difficult to put into practice. Before we close out, I just want to mention some other aspects of the book, which are really kind of intellectually interesting. So chapter 6 is on the future of life, and then he discusses economic inequality, job displacement, and so on, and has actual practical advice to parents all the way back in 2017 about what the criteria are for the kinds of things that you ought to have your children thinking about in terms of the decisions that you make about what you're going to do with your life in the context of what's going to happen with the advent of AGI. Chapter 7, fascinating, is about consciousness. And he makes a very cogent argument about consciousness being substrate independent, meaning consciousness exists in our substrate, which is neurons in our brain, but that's not what's necessary. And he kind of walks through, I think, a logical proof of why consciousness is not dependent on what substrate you're applying the intelligence on, meaning it can arise, consciousness can arise in non-biological entities. So that's his Life 3.0. It's a technological intelligence that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to include humans, right?
Okay.
That intelligence can proceed. Go ahead, Beth.
I know you're wrapping up, but I want to ask, what's the difference between consciousness and sentience? Are they synonyms?
Well, no. Sentience, it means that you can sense something. And I think it's arguable that, sensors connected to that, and consciousness is is the awareness of the sensory inputs, right?
Okay.
So they're related, but not synonymous.
Thank you.
I do want to bring in a comment from earlier. Let me scroll back and pull it in. And Justin had said, we didn't know it at the time, but 2017 was revolutionary for AI with the introduction of transformers and Max Tegmark's AGI insights. Yeah, it's interesting, Justin. I always think I was working in business intelligence in 2017, sort of transferring back out of entrepreneurship at the time, and just starting to get into that data analytics and machine learning. Like every company we talked to was like, we want machine learning. In the same way people would say we're building AI today. In 2017, it was ML. Everybody wanted it. They didn't know what it meant. They just know they needed it for their business to get ahead. And so we dealt with that a lot, obviously. So it's really interesting to think back to 2017 and to sort of watch this AI evolution slowly roll out, just in my perception. But then to your point, to know that like what will probably be earmarked as extremely important years, the invention of the transformer, and how that basically was the birth of a lot of the AI that we know today and what they're capable of from the general intelligence. So just wanted to highlight that comment. Really we appreciate everybody, Jen and Justin and Cisco and everybody else that's in our comment section. You guys are the best. Somebody was just saying they'll have to go back to the beginning because they missed the beginning of the show. Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about that earlier. Definitely go back and check this one out. And we've talked about a lot of these topics on other shows as well. Coming up tomorrow, we have the news. So every Wednesday we talk about the news. There's a lot of stuff going on in the news right now. We talked a little bit about Strawberry. We mentioned it, as well as the 5 levels of AGI that OpenAI talked about. So those will come up, I'm sure, tomorrow, as well as perhaps in individual shows, because I think they need that attention at this point. And then Thursday, we're going to be talking about more power, because AI and what any of this that we're talking about right now, for any of this to actually exist in the future, is going to take immense amounts of power. And what does that really mean? Where is that going to come from? I was saying yesterday quickly, we are looking at power consumption on orders of not cities, but countries. So where does that come from? It's, who's going to do it? What types of power? We're going to talk all about that tomorrow. And then finally on Friday, that's our 2-week recap show. So every 2 weeks on Friday, we stop. We don't have a new topic. We actually look back 2 weeks, talk about all these types of topics, new discussions that have come up, news that has come up around these topics, and just have a general open conversation. So go check out, come back all week, and then definitely go check out thedailyishow.com. Like and subscribe if you don't want to miss these shows. Like I said, we do this 5 days a week, and we haven't missed a Monday through Friday yet. We have gone through, somebody has been here every single holiday, every single day, and I don't know, I feel like we want to keep that streak going. So keep on coming back and hanging out with us, guys. Thank you, Andy, for such an amazing intro and for bringing this book to our attention, and now bringing it out to the masses so everybody else can learn about it too. So hopefully everybody will go check out the book and go read it. Thanks, everybody. We will see you guys tomorrow for the news. Until then, have a great day.
Aloha.